So Wilbur Ross is the current Secretary of Commerce, and he's a billionaire. And, Trump did this as he pretended to be really populist and looking out for regular people. He put more billionaires and mega rich people in his administration than any administration ever. It's funny how he just kind of got away with this, how he pretends like he's for regular people. And on the campaign trail, he even went after Goldman Sachs specifically because of contributions to Hillary. And then he appointed 3 people from Goldman Sachs in his administration after bashing them endlessly on the campaign trail. Trump has this amazing ability to just instantly contradict himself, look like a total ass, but then he just kind of brushes it off and acts like nothing happened, and the media doesn't cover it because they're fucking useless. So here's billionaire Wilbur Ross, Secretary of Commerce, talking about this government shutdown, which, by the way, just temporarily was averted. It was the longest semi-government shutdown in history. It went on for 35 days. You had workers missing 2 paychecks in some instances. So absolutely devastating. I think the thing that made Trump finally break was the fact that the airports were getting fucked up. They had to ground a bunch of flights at LaGuardia because the air traffic controllers weren't there. It was a huge clusterfuck, big problem. I mean, this isn't the way a first world country should be acting. It's really crazy. But the averting the shutdown it's only for a couple weeks. It's almost like they funded it, and then Trump's going to go give his narcissistic State of the Union, and then we're going to be right back in a government shutdown. So I don't know why there's a lot of premature celebration. I mean, it's great that all those workers are getting their pay now, but we might be right back in the exact same situation in a couple weeks. So, I mean, it seems like still a massive clusterfuck. But anyway, here's Wilbur Ross. He went on CNBC, and he's going to give a pretty interesting reaction to stories about government workers literally needing to go to food banks in order to eat and feed their kids.
There are reports that there are some federal workers who are going to homeless shelters to get food.
Well, I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why, because, as I mentioned before, the obligations that they would undertake, say a borrowing from a bank or a credit union, are in effect federally guaranteed. So the 30 days of pay that some people will be out, there's no real reason why they shouldn't be able to get a loan against it.
This dude is a billionaire. When he's presented with the information that, hey, some government workers need to go to homeless shelters in order to eat, he's like, whoa. He reminds me of Droopy. Remember the character Droopy?
You know what? I'm happy.
Like the dog with the long face. I don't really understand that. Yeah, you wouldn't. You're a billionaire. I don't understand why they can't just get food, go to the bank, and get a loan. Look at the country we live in now. That's the country we live in. Government officials, the Secretary of Commerce is telling Americans who are employed full-time, well, just go get a loan so you can eat. What? And then when Trump was asked about this, he was like, "Oh, what I think Wilbur Ross was trying to say, tremendous guy, unbelievable guy, I have to tell you. What he was saying was, if you go to the grocery store, a lot of these people know these people their entire lives, and they can work along, and then if you can't get it at this place, you go to another grocery store, and then you could work along, and then if you can't do that, you go to the bank and you get a loan, and you could work along." And he was making it seem like, well, anybody could just go to the grocery store and buy food and have no money. These guys don't know what it's like for regular people. Just so you know, 76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 76%. Half of workers in America make $30,000 a year or less. So, I mean, we have an economy that's a house of cards. And these guys are just utterly disconnected from how normal people live. And, I mean, to them, it's just like, what do you mean? I'm going to use, the pain and suffering of regular people, of government workers, I'm going to use that as leverage to try to get my wall. And then when they're presented with the harsh realities of this, that's their answer. That's this guy's answer. I don't understand. Why don't you just eat if you're hungry? You should just eat. I don't get it. Have your butler bring you some food. These guys should not be in these positions. Listen, the biggest divide that we have, and people will try to convince you up and down otherwise, is it's class. That's the biggest divide. You have working people versus the elite. It's, oftentimes when we talk about this, it's moneyed interests versus the average Joe and Jane. It's elitists versus populists. And this highlights that so well. What we need is what used to be called a rainbow coalition. So working people of all backgrounds and ethnicities and religions and all that stuff coming together and understanding that the same policies that help the poor immigrant brown family, those are the same policies that help the middle class white family in Iowa. And the most devious and oldest trick in the book that's used by elites is you try to divide people along racial lines and along other lines. Just find a way to make the middle-class white dude feel like the poor black guy is his enemy. And so divide and conquer. Make them fight amongst each other while you run out the back door with all the money and you keep rigging the rules in your favor. But now you see firsthand now, this is the reaction when you have these massively out-of-touch billionaires who don't belong in these positions, man. They don't. They're not ready for this shit. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They just coasted to these positions because they're of wealth and privilege and power. And this is their reaction when faced with hardcore realities that regular people have to live through. I don't understand. I don't get it. They have to go to homeless shelters to eat. Why don't they just eat at home? It's crazy to me that this guy, Trump, actually managed to convince many people in this country that he cared about the working class. On this one fact alone, just that is utterly decimated. You put Wilbur Ross as Secretary of Commerce, and he doesn't understand what it's like for people to be food insecure. And in this case, 100% because of the actions of the government. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to do the shutdown. They didn't have to, impact regular people in this negative way, but they chose to do it because they don't understand what it's like for regular folks in this country on a day-to-day basis. So you've been warned. Anybody who's like a middle-class person, poor person, working person who sees now what these guys are about, there's no way you can support them. I mean, it would be... We need to come up with a new word to describe how silly it is to be against your interests, your own interests, to this degree.